Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of
Christian Party Girl.
We're your hosts. I'm Jess.
And I'm Julia. And we're just so excited to have you guys back here with us again.
Thanks for coming back. So, in the past few episodes, we have been very lighthearted about some of our past traumas, to be honest, and kind of tying it into how God redeemed us. Even though we've messed up, even though we have done things we are not proud of, God still redeemed us in who we are today.
Yes, absolutely. And throughout those episodes, we've really had a lot of moments where we were in a situation that we didn't know how we got into. And that's something that we really want to talk about a lot today, about the expectations of what happened weren't what we expected.
Yeah. And honestly, the real truth behind what happens when you turn to a bottle or any sort of bottle to fill what you like to call the God-size hole.
Okay, look, it's a very great metaphor to explain that no matter what you're filling your body with, your mind with, your time with, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to fulfill you the way God does.
Yeah, and it's always dressed up as harmless fun.
Yes.
It's always dressed up as excitement and fulfilling even. And you know what? Maybe it is temporarily fulfilling, but if you've watched any person addicted to drugs or alcoholism or literally anything, it's always chasing that next high. And I know for my life, I've always chased that next high because I was replacing it where God should be.
Right. No, absolutely. It's something that we want to touch on today is really just going into, first of all, telling you guys we understand it's fun.
Yeah.
We are not here to tell you that it's not appealing. We're not here to tell you that it's not fun, that going out to the bars isn't fun, that hanging out with an attractive guy or girl isn't fun, that whatever that high is isn't fun. But the consequences of that are real.
Yeah.
And they're not always as obvious as people might think. So many people think that the worst thing that can happen in drinking is the most unimaginable thing. You know, the thing that you don't want to really talk about that can happen in a bar. But there's also things that happen mentally, physically, to your life, to just the choices you make, the friend groups you surround yourselves with. And we really just want to touch on that today.
Yeah. So, Julia, how did you, I know you've mentioned before how when you were 16, that's when you really turned to the party scene. So how was it presented to you?
So what's really important for everyone to know is I hated drinking.
The irony.
I am not just saying that because I've overcome it. I was the self-righteous Christian who judged everyone for their sin. And so because of the way I knew my Bible, I knew what God wanted, because I was raised in the church, it led me to have this very self-righteous attitude towards people. And so I would still go with my friends to maybe that, I don't even want to call it a party because it was like 14 years old. It was people getting older guys to buy liquor at a gas station type situations.
It's still so crazy to me, and it's so uncomfortable, but please continue.
And so there were multiple times I would go with my friends to these house parties where guys would be, and I would see how bad it could get. I would see these older guys, you know, taking advantage or hanging out with the girl and telling her how pretty she was. I would see everyone just downing alcohol, and to the point where I was cleaning up throw up.
And this was when you were 14?
I think at this time I was 15 or 14, yeah.
So you were like a freshman, sophomore in high school.
Yeah, and this was something that I saw very early on, but at the end of 8th grade into high school.
Wow.
So because I saw it in such a gross setting, and I was cleaning up throw up, helping my friends gather themselves, I hated it. I had written myself a letter that I would never drink alcohol and I would never indulge in it.
So you said that, you know, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
what made you change? What made you go to the other side of that where you did?
I think because I was at that time so radical with my decisions. I mean, clearly it was either self-righteous, judgmental, stay away from it, or the opposite. And so that's pretty much what happened when my parents divorced and all of the effects happened, whether it was the loneliness or it was me thinking I caused the divorce. Any kids of divorce understand that. Whether you think your parents don't have time for you or they're not worried about your emotions because they have their own stuff going on. And then tie that with these rumors at high school of Christians spreading gossip. The Christian FCA people were the ones making this rumor worse. And the people that I had seen as Christians in my school were the ones making my life really difficult. And so at this point, my view of Christianity is starting to switch because Christians aren't supporting me.
No.
I'm not getting the support and the love that I've been told my whole life that God gives, or the accountability or the comfort. I'm getting just straight judgment. And at this point, I hadn't even done anything to be judged. So as a 15,
it's the gossip. Yeah.
It's the gossip. And at 15, you can't handle all that. You can't handle the fighting at home. You can't handle the gossip at school.
No.
You can't add in the boys that don't like you.
Rejection.
So you get to this point where you're desperate.
Yeah.
And you're really just trying to find a way to belong. And I think for me, what that was an opportunity to make a new friend group. And so I was in this group chat. All my problems started in the group chat. And they were just so fun and so inclusive. And they wanted me around. Anytime I wasn't there that weekend, they would, hey, Jules, like, we missed you when you come into the next hang. It was this family. These people that barely knew me, just met me, are like supporting me, talking to me like about my parents.
Yeah.
Just this, it felt genuine because they wanted to be around me. And so how it was really presented to me was, like I said, my best friend at the time asked if I wanted to do a 16th birthday shot.
Yeah.
And we talked about how that, I think, was the pivotal change in this radical, judgmental Christian to, you know what, screw it.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore. I have no control over my life. I'm deserted clearly by God in my mind. So why not try something else? Something that will numb this pain.
Right. And I think your story is like so many Christians out there, or people who have walked away from the faith, people who have walked away from the church, is because they've had stuff happen in their life and they have not had supportive, true Christians surrounding them, not judging them and where they're at, because life happens. Life sucks. Life's hard. And you going through your parents' divorce is not your fault.
Right.
But you even thinking that it puts so much pressure on yourself. Like, I just want to feel accepted. I just want to feel loved. And seeing Christians spreading gossip that makes it worse, it would make anyone, myself, anybody, think, well, God's forsaken me. God's forgot all about me. God doesn't really love me.
Yeah.
Because that's just how the enemy creeps in, and especially in those hard, difficult times. So I think it's really powerful that, you know, it was the shot that you're like, you know what? Screw God at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're so young, you don't have this logical way to think about everything. You're just thinking about how this situation is going to affect you or how to feel loved in this moment. And these people were fun and we had a good time. I mean, we did silly things. We got lost in the woods. We jumped over fences. Whatever, probably trespassed on property. We were just kids.
Yeah. Just
trying to have fun. And I think every one of us had some kind of stuff going on. And so it didn't really hit me until a few years into that, how dangerous that can become. And I think when you start to see what happens when people are drinking and it is the middle of the night and parents don't know where everyone is, people just have this freedom and they start making decisions that maybe the guys don't even realize at that time are so wrong. And so I think that's what really got me to the point where, I'm in a sense starting to get so drunk, I'm kissing one of my guy friends and I don't remember it. And that's when it just gets so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was a fun time, jumping a fence, playing a fun drinking game is now turning into, I don't remember what I did last night.
Yeah.
At 16 years old.
That's crazy and terrifying. Because especially at that young age, I remember when I was 16, it's this weird hit of hormones and emotions, and boys are actually like very cute now. They no longer have cooties, and it's just all of this hits you at once, especially if you have more stuff going on at home and you don't have love being poured into you. It's no wonder anybody would find themselves in those groups of people where somebody just makes them feel belonged. Yeah. And I'm really sorry that people in the church didn't make you feel accepted and made you run from God instead of run to him.
I absolutely agree with that statement, because the people that I really wanted to blame in that moment were of course, my parents and the girls at school and even the partiers. But what I really needed, and what so many people in this time need, is a Christian friend, a genuine Christian friend who wants to pour into their lives. And there was maybe a few that tried. I'm not going to negate that. But when you're in that mindset, and this, you're not listening. You need that. You hear those stories of those pastors that say, oh, I invited them to church 30 times and they finally went. Like, we need that persistence in our Christian faith. We need to not give up on that friend. That doesn't mean do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a great point.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experiences with, you coming out of the drinking phase and the party phase, because we still hang out and have a glass of wine and stuff. Like, how have you seen Christians, how have you seen the way that Christians are reaching out, or even helped you in your time, of coming back to God?
So I guess I'll have to go back a few years.
Okay.
And also hit on the point that drinking was fun. Drinking was, I've mentioned it before and I will mention it again. It's how I made friends in college. It was the very first weekend. And, oh, come hang out with us. Come on, it'll be so fun. Let's go have fun.
So that's how your friend group formed.
And that's how my friend group formed. So my sorority girls, partiers. My boyfriend and his friend group, partiers. Anybody else I had in my life, partiers. It was party. And I've also mentioned before, my parents didn't even recognize me. It became a joke, like, Jess has fallen off the deep end. Where was this girl who used to just sit at home in high school and want to watch a movie on a Friday night with us? Because again, like you, I was looking for that belonging. And this thing was introduced as fun, as fulfilling, as exciting. And it was temporarily until I went through a really rough breakup my junior year of college. And I went back to church and I stopped drinking for probably a month because I knew if I continued to drink, I would either end up in the hospital or in a ditch dead on the side of the road.
That's serious.
It is serious. And because I knew my emotional state was so horrible, because I idolized my ex-boyfriend. I idolized him. So I lost him. I lost this thing I idolized. So this whole huge part of my identity was gone. And I just went back to the times where, I was baptized in high school and I thought this Jesus thing was pretty cool. So why not give it a shot again? Because there's only up from here. Like, I'm at rock bottom. Can't go much lower than this. And I would cry in my bedroom. I would cry walking to class. Like, it was horrible. And if anybody's ever gone through a really rough breakup, it's just the anxiety, the depression, just all kind of hits you at once, to the point where my friends thought they were going to have an intervention with me to make sure, like, I was eating and I was okay.
Right.
And So I found myself sitting in the back row at church on a Sunday morning, and to a church, ironically, one of my friends in college brought me to a few times, and I ended back up there. And then after one of the services, I felt so convicted. I went up to the pastor and I was like, I need to tell you my whole life story. We met up
there.
And then we met up for coffee, and he just told me that Jesus loves you. Like, you're going to be okay.
Wow.
And that's all I needed to hear in that moment. To the point where I started bringing other friends that were struggling to church with me. And
it's really awesome.
But then eventually, we start healing from the breakup.
That you knew.
Eventually, time does start healing. You know, maybe I really don't need this fool.
Jesus? The Jesus?
No, the ex-fool, not Jesus.
Okay.
No, Jesus is not a fool. I want to make that crystal clear. I don't need this boy who broke my heart, because if someone really loved me, he wouldn't leave. And he wouldn't treat me the way that he did. And I started slowly stepping away from God because I was okay now. It was almost, I used God to get over the situation, right?
People do that, yeah. They turn him in their like lowest points.
Mm-hmm. And I started getting better, and second semester of college hit, and my junior year of second semester hit, and I was sort of in this weird spot where I was back doing what I was doing, but I was also knew it was wrong, and I hadn't had that conviction before.
So I feel like it's really important for us to talk about conviction.
Yeah.
Because that word gets thrown around a lot in churches. And the best way to just describe what conviction is as a Christian, when there's something in your heart that's telling you this is wrong, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
That is what the conviction is. That is God speaking to you, that feeling that's like, we don't need to be here. And so what was that conviction like for you? Like, tell me about it. Every emotion you can muster.
Golly, Julia, you might make me start crying. Conviction in those moments felt like what I knew what I was doing was wrong. And gosh, I've actually never been asked to put it into words. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it truthfully, but it sounds like when you're told to say, put the dishes away, right? And you were gonna do them because you wanted to do something nice for your parents. But then since they told you to put the dishes away, you're like, no.
So obligation.
A little, yeah.
I don't like feeling obligated either.
Exactly. So take that, but reverse it. And it just takes your heart and just squinches and squishes and till it's like nothing anymore. And it just pulls on your heart because you're in this sin, whatever it is. There's a lot of sin out there. So whatever your sin that you fall into, mine, I used, going out with my friends to escape from sort of feeling lonely, to escape from all of this. And that's why I felt that conviction, because I felt so close to God. And that was honestly one of the moments in my life where I felt most whole, was at my lowest. And now, because I am doing mentally better, I am doing fine, whatever, I'm over this low of my life. It was almost, how do I go back to this point without breaking again?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It was running from a relationship that was so beautiful at the worst time of my life. And I think that's why God sent me to Georgia. I think that's why God took me away from those environments. And yeah, you know what? I sort of found it when I moved to Georgia here too. But even with those friends, I either am no longer contact with them, or we have grown closer in our faith together. And that's why our friendship is still strong. And there's nothing wrong with getting a glass of wine, in my eyes, with a friend, celebrate a wedding. But I no longer use it as an escape. It's no longer honestly fun or appealing or anything, because God has delivered me from that. And that conviction that I felt senior year of college is why I would cry every night, because I knew what I was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
And I still did it anyways, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to be friends with the worldly friends. I didn't want to put the effort and the work in and go back to those moments in high school, truly, where I was lonely and I didn't have friends. And I would sit inside with my parents on a Friday night and watch a movie and watch everybody else go out. Everybody had friends.
It wasn't as fun as it might have looked from the window.
It's like, hello.
It's like the grass is always greener. I'm like, I wanted a movie with my parents. No, but I love the way you said that. I love the way you described it. It's almost like you said, it's not describable, like what a conviction can feel like, because it can be so radically changing. And I think for me, that is what my conviction was. I mean, clearly I've told you I've done very dramatic things, but I finally had just heard in my heart that the things I was doing, especially when they weren't on a dramatic scale, maybe just going to the bars, missing church because I was too tired, this lifestyle was keeping me from doing God's work.
Yes.
And that is what we're really here to talk about today. As a Christian, we need to, as a whole, do better in recognizing the influence that we can have, the light we can be to others. But if we're hanging out at a bar till 2 a.m, even in the most innocent manner, and we're not going to church the next day, or we're not serving at the children's care, whatever, the next day because we're so exhausted, that is a way the enemy will get to you. And the enemy is intelligent.
Yeah.
He knows your heart, your brain,
your desires,
everything. He's going to tempt you differently than he's going to tempt me. He's going to pull in your heart differently than mine.
Yeah.
And that is what he's consistently doing all the time. And so that conviction that Christians feel, it's really positive because it's almost yanking them back in. And it's like, come on, like you have a job. Like our goal on this earth is to glorify God's kingdom and to bring people closer to God. And so I think something that that I really want to get into next is just talking a little bit about maybe the things that people don't think are affecting them when they're drinking, partying, hanging out with people that they shouldn't be hanging out with, going on dates with guys and girls they shouldn't be going on dates with. So we've talked a lot about clearly just the emotional effects. Like we've hit that one and really talked about how it can cause depression and anxiety and addiction. So the thing that Christians really need to realize is you don't want to be of the world. You don't want to partake in the pleasures of the world. They're pleasures for a reason, but you can be in the world. You can dine with people that are living in their sin, and you can be a light in their lives.
Yeah. I look back on previous times of my life and how being surrounded by people who do not follow God and do not follow Jesus justify your sin, glorify your sin, and make it seem wrong if you are not doing it.
Right, because they're doing the same thing or worse.
Yes.
So when you're telling them about your night or your story or whatever you got into, they're like, oh, I did that too. Why would you not go to that party? Why would you not, hang out with that guy? Like you said, they really just justify what you're doing, and you're not being convicted.
Or, what do you mean you're staying in tonight? Get ready. We're going out.
Sounds like you've heard that a few times.
Far too many. I got interrupted when I was taking a shower one time, and I had to go out. I didn't have to, but I did. And versus having Christian friends who support. I mean, you're like one of my biggest supporters in my life, and we've barely known each other for a year and a half. And you're like, Jess, I'm so proud of you for not going to that party. Jess, I'm so proud of you for ending this relationship that was not serving God. I think it's the first question anytime I bring up a boy to you is, does he love God? And does he love Jesus? And what is he doing?
And is he a kind man?
and what is he doing with his life? But those are the first questions out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed how I view relationships, not only romantically, but with friends too. Like, if someone is not a Christian,
mm-hmm.
and you want to surround yourself with Christian people and Christian friends, and those people are not Christians, it is okay to speak with them. It is okay to be part of their lives.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying do not be part of these people's lives, because we all know we all need Jesus.
And they need you.
They do.
They need you desperately to show them God's love through your life.
But what you shouldn't do and what you need to rewire your brain to do, and it's very hard to do, I've also had to personally do this, and it's very, very difficult, is not let their lifestyle influence you and put up those boundaries.
Very good point. Boundaries are super important when you're transitioning from that party life girl to this new woman of God, because you do have to set boundaries. Your boundaries can be whatever you need them to be. They can be dramatic. I had very dramatic boundaries at the beginning.
Or gradual. I had very gradual boundaries.
If you guys can't tell, there's a theme. But it's what you need. And you don't have to explain your boundary. And while you're focusing on your relationship with God, your boundaries might loosen up a little bit over time. Maybe at first you get coffee with them once a month, but you don't need to tell them about your new boyfriend, or you don't need to tell them about what you're struggling with mentally or emotionally. But you know what you do need to tell them about? When church meets and what God's doing in your life, even if it's in a subtle way.
Yeah, I'm not saying go all crazy on people, but it's not, go crazy if you want to go crazy.
Yeah, that's your style.
We're here
We've been crazy before.
But yeah, I think the way I was influenced to go back to church my junior year of college, it was, hey, let's just come with me. If you don't like it, I won't make you go back.
I like that.
And she asked me a few times, I was like, girl, like, whatever. If this is going to get you off my back about this, I'll go with you. And eventually became the place I went when I was low. So you have no idea what this subtle seed that you plant in someone can lead to. So that's why it's okay to be friends with people.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
at any phase.
You should be friends with lots of people, but your inner circle and your close friend group needs to be people that hold you accountable. You need to have friends that you trust with so much that you don't want to tell them things, in the sense of, they're not going to agree with this rash decision. And a good example might be, if I did something...
You've done this to me before.
Yeah, I've done this. If I did something where, let's say I was mean to someone, and I have to alter the way I tell my story to make myself look better, because I know my Christian friend is going to respond and be like, well, why weren't you kind? Did you think about what they were going through? And I think that is a sign you have a good quality friend group, when they love you so much that if you are acting in sin or you are not speaking truth of the Bible, they're looking at you and they're like, so tell me that story. What happened? What'd you say? What'd you do?
Bombastic side eye.
And those are the friends you want. I mean, we have those friends.
Yeah.
I can think of a few people that if I called and I said, oh, I had this story and I was mean to someone, or I threw a fit, or I was, mean to my coworker, they'd be like, why'd you do that? And they get really serious, and they don't encourage the gossip.
I do that to you.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, Julia, why are you doing this? She's like, just listen to me.
And then Jess will do the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
So
I had a friend the other day. She was like, "Can you just take HR Jess away for a second?" And I was like, "No, like, think about the situation." So, but those relationships grow because of those difficult conversations and because you can be very honest and very vulnerable with each other and still love each other at the end of the day.
Right. And just to really put this in perspective, something that I actually heard this week that I really liked talking about the bar scene. So because so many people think that the bar has to either be radical or something really bad happen, or maybe they just go because they like to sing 2007 songs and just have a good time with their friends.
And dance in a little dance circle.
The truth is, when you bring in drinking, when you bring in partying, whatever, it might not seem like a sin if something bad doesn't happen.
Right.
However, the truth is, and the truth of the Bible is, that anything you're doing that's distracting you from God is qualified as a sin. And so there was this couple that was having marital issues, and this pastor was talking about it. And and their marriage was on the rocks, and it got physical at times, like when they were fighting. And the pastor said, "Tell me how this starts. Where is the moment where the arguing starts?" And he said, "Okay, well, me and my wife go to a bar." And so that really hit me, because this situation is starting because of a bar with alcohol, with friends that encourage this kind of behavior that they're hanging out with. And it's just a really good way to put this all into perspective of that it's not the bar, or it's not the necessary alcohol.
It's not even what she's wearing, what she's not wearing.
Yeah. It's literally none of that. It's the fact that you are not, number one, surrounded by Christian people that support your relationship, and they're, people you can talk to about it. You're in a situation where you are around a bunch of men that don't respect, or men or women or whoever that don't respect your spouse, and you are just putting yourself in a situation to where things are more likely to go wrong. I'm sure they're not having these arguments in the church parking lot about the sermon.
You never know.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a really good point. Is where does it start? And just because something is dressed up in diamonds does not mean it's a real diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Cubic zirconium looks real. But yeah, I think that's a really good story, just to really resemble how just being in the environment can lead to so many other things. And it kind of makes me question, based off of my experience with the bar scene, is what are you putting in place of God?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was the party. It was the temporary fun. It was that escapism of the internal loneliness battle and not feeling good enough battle I was dealing with inside. So I ran to this other thing that I knew was wrong, because that's why I would cry about it, and trying to find that acceptance, trying to find that love, trying to find the worthiness, trying to find that security, trying to find anything that would just choose me at the end of the day. And if you try to find these things apart from God, you will find emptiness, you will, loneliness, stress, anxiety, depression, addiction. The list goes on and on and on. And we could have a whole other podcast about it.
But we really could.
Like you said, any unwanted activity that can put you in an environment to not choose God is a dangerous environment to be in the first place, because it's not always the environment that's bad either. It's the act of doing it.
So yes, I love that you really brought that to perspective, because it's not the bar that's bad. If you and I went to a bar right now and we had a margarita, it would be completely fine. It's just the situation that there are different things. It's what you're filling your mind with,
Mm-hmm.
what you're filling your heart with, what you're reading, what you're watching, who you're interacting with. All of that together combined is when you start to pivot, when your decisions change, when the actions you take change. And that's when you realize that drunkenness is a sin. Mm. To be drunk and to not be aware of what you're doing, of what you're thinking, of what you're really being guided by, that's where the sin happens. Mm-hmm. It's not the drink, it's not the sip or the toast. And that's the thing, is we just understand that your environment is so influential, and like the people you're around and the advice you take. And again, it's not the bar, but an environment like a bar is not guaranteed to set you up to do God's work, to glorify his kingdom.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll also go on the other side. Kind of going back to your story, how in the very beginning you were like, I wrote myself a note that I would never do this, and the self-righteousness of those people too. Again, what is that environment like? What are you filling your heart with? What are you filling your mind with that makes you think you are better than everybody else?
There's a lot of things that could have played into that childhood, the morals, the way I was raised, trauma.
But I'm not just saying you. I'm saying anybody who is like that.
Anyone that is self-righteous does not understand or know how to extend grace to somebody. If you cannot extend grace to someone and offer forgiveness to someone, you are completely not seeing what Christianity is all about, what the gospel is all about. And so that is just as much of a problem. Being self-righteous and not giving grace to people is just as much of a problem as getting drunk, freaking out, not knowing what you're doing the next day, because you're not being guided by God.
Yeah, so that's the only reason why I brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either side of you that you go, I know we have obviously experience on both sides, but it's turning your eyes away from God. And we use this metaphor of the bottle, right? Because the bottle, you try to fill the bottle up with worldly stuff. And like I said earlier, and sort of joked, it's that God-sized hole that you're trying to fill the bottle with. Maybe alcohol, it may be pills, it may be sex, it may be lust, it may be porn, it may be
success,
it may be money, it may be greed. Whatever it is that is not Jesus. It is not God's love. It's not those two things, pretty much. That's honestly what's wrong with the world. But I just think when you try to change, or I just think when you try to fill yourself up with anything that's not God, you're ultimately going to be left unfulfilled and still thirsty for more.
And really adding to that, something that I want everyone to hear is that as a Christian, your testimony, your life, the way you live your life is under a microscope. It is something that non-believers are looking at. It is something that atheists, Christians, if you are giving yourself the title of a Christian, people are watching the way you live your life. And if you are going to waste that opportunity by judging people and not being with them, not holding their hand in that situation, you are wasting a testimony that could glorify and bring someone to the kingdom. And not only that, but if you are a Christian and you are living your life in a way that is showing people that you don't follow the Bible, you aren't reading it, you are being a lukewarm Christian, that is just as destructive, because people are looking to you for hope. They are praying, they are begging for that joy and that peace, and you are showing them as they look at you under a microscope that Christianity is full of hypocrites.
Yep. And Jesus was not a hypocrite. No. Jesus came to save the world and got persecuted on a cross for it. And like a death we should experience every single person should have experienced. Thieves, robbers, criminals, murderers, whatever. The whole gamut, lustful, everything is something we should have, that's what we deserved. And he came to serve us, wash our feet clean so we could have a relationship with him and our Father in heaven. Yeah. So ultimately, what are you doing? What are you doing that shows God in your life, in your day-to-day? Yeah. How are you showing up for your non-Christian friends? How are you showing them Jesus?
It's something that we all need to do more of, but ultimately just bringing it back. The dangers of the bottle is addiction, it's reliance on it, it's depression, it's the need to compare, and that goes into so much more than just a bottle of alcohol. That's insecurity, that's having friend groups that don't support you, that's having people that justify your decisions, that's therapy 10 years down the line. I'm there right now.
Been there.
It's something that has so many consequences to it, and nobody understands it. And they don't see it if it's not a dramatic end to the night. Because sometimes the consequences are not you waking up and not remembering what guy you kissed, or they're not you face planting in a bush, or spending all your money at a bar. It's trauma 10 years later because you realize you were never seen, you were never validated, you were never heard.
You're never really loved.
Exactly. You didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
The reason we've done this series, and the reason that we are so passionate about it, if you can't tell, is because we wanted to show you that these stories have funny moments in them, and they're lighthearted because we've made them lighthearted. But we were in situations where we didn't know where we were. We didn't know the guy that was next to us. We didn't know why we felt we had to make these decisions. But it's because we picked up a bottle instead of the Bible.
Ooh, mic drop, girl. But it's so true. And I just encourage anybody, everybody, from if self-righteous, and you're going to feel attacked if you're self-righteous. I hope you do.
Yeah, me too.
To the lukewarm Christians, to the Christians, to the atheists, to anybody who has ever heard the name Jesus, or if you haven't heard the name Jesus, I encourage you to get to know him. And I encourage you to go through the Gospels, start in Matthew, go to Luke, hop over to Mark, and finish in John, and experience what real love is.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
And if you don't know how to do that, please reach out to your Christian friends. Even the one that's invited you to church like 20 times and they're kind of annoying, they're doing it because they love you. And so if you don't know, reach out to us. Shoot. We're here to help you. We'll find connections for you. If you're in the area, we'll meet with you. Like, we're here for you. We love you.
Yes. And you are loved, and Jesus loves you.
Well, this concludes our series on really the party life and the bar stories and our spring break stories. And going forward, we really want to dive into some real topics, like real things like that people are really going through and really experiencing in their mid-20s. But we just really encourage you to go back, take a listen at our other episodes. There's some really funny ones.
And we would love to hear how either you are still in the party scene, how you're trying to leave. Trust me, I understand how hard that is. It's a very difficult lifestyle to break free of. So I understand. Julia and I both understand how it makes anybody feel leaving that scene and trying to go back to church and trying to refine God or find God for the first time. So I just encourage you, like, we would love to hear your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Your story's important, and so are you.
And sometimes it's okay to be a little crazy and have a little or a lot of faith that everything will end up just the way it's supposed to. But thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of Christian Party Girl. Can't wait to have you next time. Bye.